Welcome to Maximizer CRM video tutorials. This video will show you how to create key fields lists and how to set up mandatory fields in Maximizer CRM web access. Key fields let you choose the most important information to display with entries. Mandatory fields control the minimum amount of information that needs to be entered for new entries. We'll also learn how to create mandatory rules for user-defined fields to set fields as mandatory when conditions are met. Creating key fields lists. Key fields are important user-defined fields and system fields that are displayed in the Details pane, making them more readily accessible. Users can create key fields lists in Maximizer if they have the Modify Key Fields privilege. System administrators can also create key fields lists in Administrator. In Maximizer, you can modify key fields lists while viewing an address book entry in the Details pane. Click the icon next to the key fields drop-down list. You can click on an existing key fields list to modify it. To create a new key fields list, click Add. Enter a name for the key fields list in the list name field. To let all users view this key field list, select Public from the Read Access list. To assign fields to the list, select the Key Fields tab. Select the type of Maximizer entry to assign key fields to from the drop-down list. Click Add Field. Select a basic or user-defined field to add to the list and click Insert. Continue to add more basic and user-defined fields to the list. You can format the list in 2 columns. Click and drag the fields different places in the list. You can also add separators to the list to group the fields. Click Save once you're happy with the list. Back in the Details pane, you can view the new Account Manager's key field list. Setting up mandatory system fields. System administrators can set up lists of mandatory fields in the Administrator. To set system fields as mandatory, in the left pane under Preferences, click Mandatory Fields. To expand the list, click the plus sign beside the type of entry the field applies to. The list of system fields for the entry is displayed with the field's current status, optional, always mandatory, or mandatory. Some system fields such as company name and full access are mandatory by default. In the mandatory fields preferences, they are displayed as always mandatory. The other fields are optional by default, but you can specify that any of the fields must be mandatory. Click Modify Options. Select the field and click Mandatory or Optional to change the status of the field. Continue to change other field settings in the same way. Click OK to save the changes. Back in Maximizer, when users save entries, they are prompted to specify values for any mandatory fields that do not have values. Setting up mandatory user-defined fields. You can set user-defined fields as mandatory in Maximizer or Administrator. In Maximizer, open the Set Up User-Defined Fields dialog box. Let's click on the Contact Type field to modify its settings. Under Mandatory, you can specify that the field is always mandatory. Click Save. The mandatory requirement is indicated with a red asterisk. Setting up mandatory rules for user-defined fields. When you work with address book entries, you can specify that user-defined fields are mandatory if a rule is matched. For example, in the address book, the contact type user-defined field has 3 possible values: prospect, partner, and customer. Depending on the values selected as the contact type, users need to specify different fields. If prospects is selected, the product interest and assigned partner fields should be selected. You can use mandatory rules to force users to set values for these fields when the contact type is set to prospect. In the Set Up User-Defined Fields dialog box, select the field. This feature applies only to address book entries. Under Mandatory, select Mandatory based on rule. Click Insert Field to add a field to the rule. Select the Contact Type field. Finish writing the rule. In this case, the rule is contact type equals prospect. Click Save. Complete the same steps for the Assign Partner field. When you set the contact type to prospect, you are prompted to enter values for the product interest and Assign Partner fields. Thank you for using Maximizer CRM video tutorials. For further information, visit www.maximizer.com.